Hello, in this video we will load data from CSV, Excel and JSON files into Pandas and save our data frames back out to those same formats. So let's start by import Pandas as PD. Before we can practice reading files, we need some files to read. So let's create them right here in Colab. So first let's build our data frame like we saw in the last video, manually, without reading it from nowhere. So I'm just gonna copy and paste this one as it's very similar to the last video. So as you can see, we are doing it from the get-go. pd.dataframe, and then inside the parentheses takes the argument, and our argument is a Python dictionary with key value pairs. So the keys will become the column names and the lists will become the values in each column. So let's run this. Well, first off, notice this guy, buggy, on the edge has none on purpose, so we can later do some filtering and clean up the data, and sometimes data comes with empty values or none. So let's run this. Now let's display it with the Google Colab renderer. And here is our data frame. So let's start with CSV files. CSV stands for comma separated values. It's the most common data format we will encounter. It's plain text, every row on its own line, values separated by commas. Almost every program or tool can read and write CSVs. So let's send this data frame to a CSV file. So the Pandas syntax to CSV, and inside the parentheses as an argument we need to specify the name of the file we want to. So in this case we will name it pirates.csv, and we will add another parameter, comma index equals false. So to CSV saves the data frame to a file. The file name goes in quotes. Index equals false tells Pandas not to save the row numbers. If we leave this out, Pandas writes an extra column in our CSV file with this value, with the index as a value, this 0, 1, 2, 3, and without a column name. So we almost never want this. So let's run pirates to CSV. Let's run this. Green arrow. So now the file is sitting in Google Colab's file system. So we can see it by clicking in this little folder icon on the left sidebar, and here is a file named pirates.csv. So if we double click, we can see the contents of a file. Google Colab displays CSV files, renders them nicely with striped rows and little lines on the columns, not just the text. We could download this file. Download it, start, see it, press and hold escape. So here's a little Pirate CSV downloaded. If I double click just like that, it opens it. I have Excel to open them by default. But we could, for example, open with Notepad, and here is our famous comma separated values, right? Rows and each value separated by a comma. Okay, so back at Google Colab. So we created it, turned it into a data frame, then sent it to CSV. Now let's read it from the CSV. And we are going to name it DF, which stands for DataFrame, equals pandas.read CSV. Let's run this. And let's display our, let's print it. Print data frame. And here's our CSV. So our data frame is back, loaded from the file. pd.readCSV is probably what the single most used command I use. So let's look at a few options I use regularly. So for example, let's rewrite data frame. Now we do here, it auto-completed assigning the index column, but we're gonna do something else. We're gonna use usecols. Name crew. So usecols, this argument used when we read the CSV, lets us load only the columns we want. So if we are going to import a CSV which contains 80 columns, but we only need to work with 3 of them, so we just bring in 3 of them or 2 of them. Okay, and now let's see another example. Data frame equals pandas.read CSV. Again with the let's n number of rows equals 3. So nrows loads only the first n rows. So this one is great for previewing a huge file. So if we have a CSV that contains thousands, hundreds of thousands, or I don't know, a lot of rows, we could just bring in the number we want, just like to see what data it has. So let's bring the full df, and as you can see, there's also index call, which specifies a column to be the index. Let's bring our let's just bring back our whole data frame. And now, just to do it as an example, let's send it out to be a Excel file. Of course, we send it out as a CSV, and then we can open that with Excel, as I saw already, but let's assume we want to send it to Excel. So we need to run this first, exclamation. This exclamation mark lets us run a shell command from inside Google Colab. We could do it using, I think there's a terminal here. Here, terminal. We could install it using this terminal, I guess, but I'm not sure. Exclamation and then pip install open, like this. Let's run this. So, like I said, the exclamation mark at the start lets us run a shell command from inside Google Colab. The /q means quiet, so in other words, it's for less output. I see a little green check mark, so now let's try to send our df or our pirates. We still have it, and df should be the same one. So it's all the same. df2, and one of the options is to Excel, and then we specify the name of the file. Again, we specified index equal false, and we can specify one more thing in Excel files: sheet name. But let's name it bounties, and then let's print file saved. Let's run this. File saved. Let's look at it. And here it is, bounties.xlsx. Now I don't know if if I double clicked, it automatically downloaded. So let's go see it. So here it is. The file was in my downloads folder. So let's double click. And here it opens up with Excel. And adds these little lines. And as you can see, our sheet is bounties. So here we are back in Google Colab, and of course df excel equals pd dot read excel. we can bring it back from the Excel file. Bounties. And it always wants to name our index. The autofill likes that. We're just gonna specify the sheet name we want to bring in. Let's run this. So here's our data frame brought back from the Excel. So one thing Excel can do that CSV cannot is have sheets, various sheets in one Excel file. So let's do an example of that, of the syntax needed for that. So let's go straw hats equals pirates and crew equals straw hat. So let's first make sure this worked. Straw hats. So it created a data frame where on the crew column the value is equal to straw hat. So yes, it worked. Let me delete this one and straw hats. So now let's others equal so it's the other way around. Pirates were in the crew column, the value is not straw hat. Let's run this. Let's go. So now here's the magic syntax with pd dot ExcelWriter I'm gonna name it differently. Bounties fleet.xlsx as writer straw hats to Excel, straw hats to Excel, and now it takes the writer and we need to specify sheet name straw hats and the index equals false, and then others to Excel, and we takes the writer and sheet name others index false. So let's run this. And here we go, bounty split. So let's download it. Let's look at it. And here we go. We have an Excel file with straw hats in one sheet and others in another. So this little, I called it magic syntax. PD ExcelWriter PD. ExcelWriter is a context manager. The with block keeps the file open while we write multiple sheets, then closes it cleanly at the end. This is very useful. So, well, this is the way to do it when we want to write multiple sheets on one Excel file. Okay, so now let's look at some JSON examples. JSON, that stands for JavaScript Object Notation, is a standard format for the data on the web. If we're ever pulling data from an API, it's probably gonna come back as a JSON. So let's pirates, this is still our data frame. So pirates, let's clear the cell output. Copy it. No copy. Clear. Pirates to JSON. Let's run this. So after we run this, we get this pirates.json in our folder tab. So let's double click to see the file. And this is the .json. It's a list of objects, of JSON objects, and each object has a key value pair. So let's look at this line. To JSON specifies send this to as a JSON object, and this specifies the file. Indent equals to 2 is just to make it more readable with an indentation. And then this is the important one, or orient records. This orient parameter controls how the data frame is structured in the JSON output. Orient equal records means each row becomes a separate JSON object, a list of JSON objects, and its object was a line in our data frame, a row in our data frame. And we have a few of them, like orient columns or orient index. We can search those up if we want a different kind of JSON object. So, and of course we get the counterpart, data frame from a JSON equals pandas.readJSON, and then we specified what JSON file, and then here's our data frame again, but now being read from a JSON. Another great thing about Pandas is that we can load CSV files or JSON files directly from a URL, and Pandas will handle the download for us. So let's do an example of that. Let's URL, and then I will just copy a URL of a classic example about some Titanic data. Let's now df is equal to read, and then CSV from a URL, and display the head. Sorry, I am missing the pandas dot read CSV. And here it is, data from the Titanic. Let's just Titanic, no, it's df.info. So here's our columns, our number of non-null rows, and what type. So before we wrap up, let's do a little recap. We saw CSV files, which are plain text, universally compatible. We saw it's a single table, and it works very well for sharing data, storing data. This is the most used for me. We also saw Excel files. Where are they? Here they are, the Excel files. And the only thing about this one is because Excel is very widely used and we can store multiple sheets in one file. Well, it needs an open PyExcel library. And then finally on this video we saw the JSON file, which is the standard web format. This is in JSON. So this is what we get when we get data from an API. That's why it's important. So that's it for this video. Hope you liked it. See you on the next one. Thanks for watching.